Whakalofalahi atu and warmest Pacific greetings to you all. My name is Riki Welsh and I work here at the University of Canterbury, where I've been for the past 9 years. I started off in projects and events before going into a role around pastoral care, and I am now a manager of the Pacific Development team. And I think my experience in events management, then dealing with people's pastoral care issues and then managing teams, has given me a really good insight into the importance of work-life balance. And so I want to share some of the things that I've learned and some of my insights over the years. So I guess the first thing to note is why it's important. In life, obviously we have a lot of different things that can cause us stress. It can be our family, it could be financial issues, it could be your boyfriend or girlfriend. One of them that a lot of people go through, from what I have seen, is getting that balance right between work and life. Cool, well I think it's good for us to first define what we're talking about when it's work and life. So when I refer to work, I'm talking about paid employment or voluntary work. And there's something both of them have in common. It is that you should know what your duties are. So if you're in employment, you'll have sort of your job description, it'll tell you everything you have to do. And if you're a volunteer, hopefully you've been given some brief. And it's good to know what your brief is or your job description so that you don't end up doing a whole lot of jobs that aren't actually yours. Because that is one of the things that causes work-life balance tip-overs, is that you start to pick up so much work that's actually outside of your brief, whether you're a volunteer or a paid worker. And so firstly, it's probably good to define what we're talking about. So when I say work, I'm talking about the things that are listed in your job description that you are paid to do. Now that's a really good thing to remember, because sometimes actually we're getting asked to do all these little bits and pieces that aren't in our job description. Maybe we're not getting paid for it, or maybe it's not covered in our volunteers' costs. And actually that's almost no longer work, that's going into your life sort of balance. So remembering that first part, that definition of work. The second part is life, and that refers to things like leisure, your health, your well-being, spending time with friends and family, and it actually also refers to what I call life admin. It's stuff like staying on top of our laundry, cleaning up and doing our chores, if you're old enough to have a car and a vehicle, making sure that is maintained. You need to make sure these things are happening as well so that you feel good about everything and not too stressed, and making sure these two things, work and life balance, isn't the easiest thing to do. And so a good place to start off on when it doesn't balance is understanding how does that balance shift. And it can shift for people in different reasons, but the two that I think important for young people especially, who I have worked with, is the first one is extreme passion for the job. So what shifts the balance? Extreme passion for the job. And so when we're working in certain areas, and especially when you're working with young people and in ministries, you're doing that work often not for the pay at all. You're doing it because you are very, very passionate. And what tends to happen is you're so passionate, you go above and beyond, and you start to do things that are actually outside your job description, and sometimes things that are outside of your responsibility. So it's good to think about that. How passionate am I about my job? Because then you can start to see, hold on, is my work-life balance starting to shift a bit? The second reason that I find young people often the balance shift is the ability to leave the emotional toll of work at work. So as I mentioned, I once worked in pastoral care a lot, and sometimes I found working with people and hearing their experiences, they were so deep and I wanted to help them so much, I actually took that home with me. And although whilst at home I wasn't physically doing work, I wasn't writing up case notes or offering counselling support, but I was holding a lot of the deep things that were said to me at work whilst I was at home, and that just stressed me out. And it will be the same for many. When you are unable to let go of that, it will cause stress at home, and which of course is your life area. So those are some of the things that cause the imbalance. Cool, so from here I thought I could give you a few tools or tips really on some of the things that can help you make sure you have a good work-life balance. And the first one is actually very hard for young people. I completely understand that as I say it, but it's so important if you can try to achieve this. And it is trying to have a good working relationship with your manager. So when I say manager, it's good to explain that obviously in employment you usually have a manager, so you definitely know who that is. In voluntary work, it might not be a manager, so I'm referring to perhaps the person that you report to casually, and I'm also referring to even sometimes maybe your peers being able to have that good relationship of being able to be assertive and talk as we continue. And that might sound a bit funny, but it is so important. And notice I said good working relationship. You don't need to have such a good relationship that you're high-fiving each other and ringing up each other at night time and telling each other jokes. Actually, ringing each other up is probably an old people thing used for a snap these days, but I digress. You want a good relationship with your manager for a number of reasons. And one of them is because if you can have a really good conversation with them, your manager might actually be able to help out without you even asking. They may notice by the way that you talk to them, they might think you've got a bit on your plate. Actually, do you want me to take that off? Good managers will do that. Managers want to be good people so that we can all achieve goals together. And so by giving them information, they might proactively act upon it. If they don't do that, hopefully you have a good enough relationship where you can be a bit more assertive and say, hey, I'm not struggling at work at the moment. Can we have a conversation about this? And then of course the last thing, when it gets one step further from that, is having the ability to say no to your manager. Now that's quite difficult, I know, but we need to remember no is an anointed word, and we are allowed to say no to things that perhaps don't fit within our job description, or perhaps things that actually you just can't take on anymore, and you might need to be blunt. You can say, I can say yes and have a mental breakdown, or I can say no and we can keep going as is. But that's the first tool, is trying to have that good open relationship with your manager. The second tool is similar to the first and probably equally as hard, but it's being able to have an open conversation with friends and family. Sometimes we think that work-life balance is all about stopping work from affecting your outside life. But the opposite is also true. Sometimes it's the life stuff that actually starts to impact on work, and actually you're not able to even fulfill your contract of 40 hours a week or whatever it might be, because you've got so much other stuff going on that's not work. It's just friends and family and maybe sporting commitments that you've dedicated yourself to, that actually you've over-dedicated yourself, you've stretched yourself far too thin. And so you need to be able to have open conversations with friends and family about how much time you actually have to spend with them and what you can actually do. And again, I know that is a really hard thing to try and ask of young people, but it is a skill that you can practice. I would like to think parents are a good place to start, but of course everyone's different and has different relationships. But if you can think of a good place to start on having those conversations, I think that's a good way to start practicing. The last thing to keep in mind when balancing work and life is, I think it's quite important to sort of know, is that you don't need to have solved someone's problems by the end of the day. You don't need to have a backup plan for absolutely everything that could go wrong. And you don't need to always meet deadlines. That actually might be a bit more flexible than they seem. And that, once again, a hard mindset to get into, that it's okay not to have these things done by the end of the day. You will be able to pick it up tomorrow. And a good way to try and unpack this is to have someone to talk to about it. So a counsellor, something formal like a counsellor or a supervisor at work can always be useful to talk to. But anything down to even a sibling, an older sister, a younger brother, someone who you can just talk to, talk, and they can let you know, oh, you're right, maybe you should have done that. Or they will usually see it the other way, and are you sure you had to do that though? And they can reassure you and make you feel, actually, it's okay. I didn't finish that report, that's due tomorrow, but at 5 o'clock, I'm going to enjoy my dinner, relax, have a good sleep, and then start work on it tomorrow. So that's just a few very quick things. Sort of some of the last things I wanted to talk about was the importance of boundaries when it comes to work and life. And there's a whole lot of different boundaries that we have to observe, but I thought one that's quite important for young people is usually when you're working with a young person and then that work starts to move into hanging out beyond work hours, where it's no longer a work relationship, it's a very good friendship. And what you really want to be careful is when that young person might become reliant on you, reliant in terms of just operating their own life, because now you've sort of taken something that was work and now it's in your life as well, and you're having to help that person all the time. I myself am guilty of that. When I was working in pastoral care many years ago, I actually got in trouble because there was a student who had no place to stay, and without even thinking about it, I said, just come and stay at my house. I ended up staying for about a year in a spare room, and trust me, I did get in trouble. Once I just told my boss because I didn't realise it was such a bad thing. So we had to sort through some of those things. But keep that in mind when you're working with young people and trying to help others. There does need to be a clear boundary, and you don't want that work becoming part of life, which not only is it just for your own benefit, but obviously professional boundaries and all of that. The last thing I wanted to end on was giving you sort of one tip, but with 3 different methods, on what I think would also help with the work-life balance. And the tip is use your non-work time wisely. So it's great to do, once you finish your paid work, to do stuff that fulfills you, and that could be extra work like volunteering, helping out at Red Cross. That stuff is good, but be careful not to do too much of extra work and to take some time to look after yourself. So I really would like for you to go to a website, www.mentalwealth.nz, and have a look there at, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can have a look at, but these ones specifically, have a look at sleep hygiene for starters. If you can get a really good sleep each night, that will go a long way to helping you both at work and in life. And it's really easy. There are practical tips you can do. I won't go through them. Please go to that website and have a look. The second thing that I think is really important to do is practice mindfulness. So mindfulness is when you get a chance, it's where you get rid of all of the crazy thoughts in your head, the things about work and what you have to worry about, and instead you just take time to relax, soak in the moment. You could be watching it, in some cases you could be watching a TV show, and it's just about enjoying that show and the laughs or thrills you get from it, without worrying about everything else that is going on. There's lots of different tips for mindfulness. Once again, just go to that website, www.mentalwealth.nz. And the last one might sound a bit funny, but take some time to learn your culture. Now, it doesn't matter who you are, you have culture. Some people think, I don't have any culture. Learning about that stuff is really good because it connects you to your past. There's lots of easy tips once again. Sometimes it's finding out about your family name and where you can trace that back to, how your family came about that name, finding about why your name is that. Sometimes it connects you back to others, and there are often cultural reasons behind that. Doing this gives us a bit of sense of purpose, a better understanding of ourselves. It makes us feel a bit better, so it helps when times get stressful. So that is it for me. Hopefully you take away something useful from this. Apologies if you don't, but oh well, you got to listen to me ramble for a while. If you have any questions, I believe my email address is being made available, and I'm happy to answer any of those. Thank you very much.